Welcome to Trouble with Tish. I'm Tish and I be Trouble. If you're a returner, welcome back. Today we have chapter 17 of The Rise of the Deva'shi and a Mask Monday with the Beauty Ninjas. So stick around to find out what happens next.
Troubles on the mind, hands around your throat, out in open waters trying to stay afloat. Remember to forget.
Alright, like I said, Beauty Ninja Mask Monday. We have chapter 17 of our book. And then we also have a mask. We are using the Dermal Royal Jelly Collagen Essence mask today. This is a collaboration with the Beauty Ninjas. There will be a link in the description box. So go down there and check out and see what everybody else has going on for their Mask Mondays. I'm going to put this on and we'll be back with the story. Alright, I had to pop back in. Just a trigger warning. If you are sensitive to sexual assault themes, do not watch this. Do not listen to it. It will not be good for you. I just needed to put this in here. I don't want to be the cause of anybody's traumas getting triggered, you know? So if you are triggered by that, please, please, please do not watch this. Now we will move forward with the story. Obviously, you know, there's going to be that theme going on within the story. So, again, if that stuff really bothers you, please do not watch this. Alright. For the rest of you, enjoy the story. That seems like a weird thing to say. Anyways. Alright, this mask is a very cerame, and it's a thick cloth too. So we will see how we like this at the end. So, for chapter 17. After Aylmar left me, I remained in my bed for some time, knowing that I needed to sleep, but far too excited to succumb. My mind raced with recent memories, how I felt when his strong body was on top of me, how I loved it when he was so close and I could caress his smooth skin. I had never felt so exhilarated in my life, and when I thought he would take me, and the disappointment I felt when he left was enormous. In the moments before he departed, he held me tightly and whispered that he needed to ask me something he had been wanting to ask me for some time, but that would also be reserved for when he returned. While my original intent had been to wait for Aylmar in my chamber, I realized that his meeting with Herrick sometimes lasted all day. The prelate left nothing more than the sound of his own voice, and I was glad that as a huntress I was spared most of the long-winded speeches he gave whenever he had the chance. Around midday, I finally rose, having decided that I would sleep that evening, and I smiled to myself when I hoped that would not happen. As I dressed, I made up my mind to visit Enna, although I knew I did not want to ride out from Tegernon since we had just patrolled last night. She was in excellent condition, but she had remained in the corral while I was sick with poison, and I wanted to gradually build up her strength. In my experience, pushing a horse beyond their limit was a sure way to lose their trust, and I was not taking any chances with my Enna. Therefore, I did not dress for riding, and instead chose a close-fitting tunic and pants made of a soft blue fabric. As I laced up my blouse, my thoughts turned to the coming evening, and what Aylmar could possibly want to ask me. I found it odd that he would not ask me before he left, but he did enjoy being cryptic with me. I sighed, for I would know the question soon enough, and once I pulled on my boots, I was off to the stable. On the way, I stopped in the kitchen and retrieved a few honey cakes and some fruit for my girl. "Good morning," I said brightly as I stepped into her stall, and she softly whinnied in response. She nosed the pouch at my belt, for she knew well that I had never arrived without treats. "Maybe we should go for a ride today," I mused as she gobbled the cakes. "I know if we did things your way, you would do nothing but eat all day and get fat and lazy." I began to brush her silky mane as Kieran appeared behind me, looking as if something was troubling him. I asked him what was amiss, and he kicked at the straw for a time before he responded. "I sat at the North Tower all morning, hoping you would come," he said. "I patrolled with Finlay last night. I was resting," I replied as I turned away so he would not see the smile that curled the corners of my mouth. I hoped he would not ask me to define rest. Kieran remained silent, so I changed the subject in an attempt to lighten his mood. "I am told you will command the Western contingent. That is quite an accomplishment. You must be very pleased." "Yes," he said absently as he took a step towards me, so close he was practically pushing me against Enna's shoulder. I backed away from him and began to brush her tail, mystified by his strange behavior. He looked me in the eye and asked, "Will you come with me?" I almost dropped the brush when he said that. "No, you know I cannot leave Tegernon," I said when I regained my composure. "We could be together, out in the west where it's quiet," he continued. "We could be happy there." "Kieran, there is no we," I tactfully reminded him. "But there could be," he pressed. "Please give me a chance. You will be happy with me, I swear it." I turned to face him, and while I did not want to have this sort of conversation in a stable, I wanted to be very clear with him. I did not know how he got these ideas into his head, and I only wanted to be truthful. "I am happy here," I said firmly. "Aylmar and I—" "Aylmar," he said, the first hunter's name disdainfully, as if it was a curse. "He does not treat you as well as I would," he proclaimed. "I would treat you like a queen." "How would you know how he treats me?" I demanded. "I see his eyes lusting after you. He does not deserve you." "So you think I deserve someone who screams at me in a stable?" "Come away with me," he implored. "Give me a chance. You will see the good life I can give you." "I will not. I will stay here with Aylmar, and that is the end of it," I shouted. Anna began to stamp her hooves and flicked her tail. Such strife made her uncomfortable. For all of her training as a warhorse, it always made her unhappy when I raised my voice. "You need to leave," I said as I glared at him. "I will not have you upsetting my horse." I turned to Anna, my only thought to calm her as I stroked her nose and spoke softly to her when Kieran grabbed my braid and threw me to the ground. I heard rather than felt a thud as my neck struck the packed dirt of the stable floor. I was so dazed I thought I was moving, only to realize that I was moving as Kieran dragged me to a vacant stall, all the while muttering that I would be his one way or another. He threw me onto the hay as if I was a piece of trash and put himself on top of me. As I struggled to come to myself, he tried to put his mouth on me. I shakily punched him in the face, but I was still stunned and my aim was off, and he easily avoided me. I threw my knees up into his stomach, desperately trying to get the lower half of him off of me. He absorbed the impact and grabbed my wrists, pinning them over my head with one hand while he fumbled with first his clothing, then mine. Kieran could not manage to unbuckle my belt as he tried to pull it off, his fingers biting into my skin at my waist and piercing my flesh. By now my head had cleared, and I kicked his knee, cursing the soft leather boots I wore that day and wishing I had put on the other pair. The kick managed to shift his weight to the side slightly, but enough for him to lose his grip on my wrists, and as I freed my hands I grabbed my dagger and slashed wildly at his chest. Kieran recoiled from my counterattack while I scrambled to my feet and tried to run from the stall, only to have him catch me by the ankle. Again I fell to the ground with a thud. He pulled himself up, my legs tearing at my pants, grabbing my thighs and cursing that I would be his. Out of desperation I threw my dagger back at him, and the hilt struck him square in the forehead. He shouted in pain, his hands reflexively protecting his face as I got to my feet again. My freedom was short-lived, for he quickly got to his knees and lunged at me. He grabbed my legs, and again I fell, but this time a pair of hands caught me. I looked up into Finley's face. He snatched me from Kieran's grip and hauled me out of the stall into the safety of his arms. Out of the corner of my eye I saw Saria strike Kieran with such force he landed on his back, out cold. "Find Aylmar," he growled, and Saria was off without a word. Finley held me against him, blocking my view of Kieran with his body and telling me that Aylmar would be there soon. I was too shocked to speak and clutched his arms as I stared at the floor. I did not even look up when I heard others enter the stable. Aylmar ran to me and pulled me into his arms, holding me for long moments before he spoke. I pressed my face into his chest with such force I felt the weave of his shirt imprint on my cheek. "Are you injured?" he asked, and I shook my head. Aylmar glared at his second and demanded to know what had happened. Apparently, Saria burst in on Aylmar and Herrick and only said that I was hurt, and she did not offer any details in front of the prelate. Finley quietly told Aylmar that he and Saria heard me screaming. I had not realized I had made a sound. I felt his entire body tense as Finley described what he saw upon entering the stable, that Kieran had me in one of the last stalls and my frantic attempts to escape. The second hunter could not meet Aylmar's eyes when he concluded, as he did not know if they had reached me in time. Aylmar went down on one knee in front of me, his wrath barely contained as he asked me to tell him what had happened in the stall. I shook my head again, this time to clear it, and took a deep breath. "He asked me to go to the Western contingent with him," I said, my voice hardly a whisper. "And when I said no, he pulled me to the ground and dragged me there." I indicated the stall occupied by Kieran's limp form. "He held my wrist over my head, and I hit him, but he tripped me. He couldn't get my belt off." Elmar brought me close to him and said that he had heard enough, and while he held me gently, I could feel the rage boiling in him. He murmured that I was safe now, that he loved me, and he would not let Kieran hurt me ever again. Kieran began to stir, and Elmar rose, turning me over to Finley, who immediately put his hand on my shoulder. "On your feet," Elmar bellowed. Kieran's many years of training made him stand at attention immediately upon hearing the first hunter's command. So quickly he forgot to fasten his pants. This caused Elmar to snap his head around to me, only to become more enraged at what he saw. I looked down and gasped to see the state of my clothing, bloody and torn. "Cover yourself," Elmar snarled at my attacker. "You have one chance to speak." "She cut me, my lord," he said as he fixed his clothing. "Surely you won't punish me that she's the one who used a weapon on me." I saw the slice across his chest that still oozed blood and wished I had aimed lower. Kieran began to babble in his terror as Elmar grabbed him by the neck and held him at arm's length and let his feet dangle above the ground. "You dare to harm my huntress. You dare to draw her blood," he seethed. "Name a reason why I shouldn't kill you now." Elmar demanded as he slammed Kieran into the wall. "Name one," he roared, as the very rafters shook with his fury. Knowing that Kieran could not answer with his air cut off, Kieran's hands flew to his neck in a futile attempt to peel away Elmar's fingers, but his strength paled in comparison. "Let him down," I said as I reached forward to Elmar's free hand. "Elmar, he's not worth it." I knew full well that Elmar could easily crush his throat with one hand or simply wait for him to suffocate. "You beg for the life of this cur?" he demanded, not taking his eyes from his prey. "I beg you not to have his blood on your hands." I did not want him to endure the burden of taking Kieran's life, not even for me. Elmar turned toward me and his eyes barely softened, only to harden again as his gaze settled on my upper body. I looked down and realized that Finley had kept his hand on my shoulder to hold my shirt together. It was in tatters, hardly covering me. I tried to pull the torn edges together as Elmar turned and stalked out of the stable, dragging Kieran by his neck. We ran after them and emerged in time to witness Elmar throw Kieran into the dirt. I saw that the rest of the hunters were there. All seemed to know what was happening, and all stared at Kieran with cold eyes. Finley was again behind me, this time placing one of the horse blankets around my shoulders. Anetha came to my side and held my hand. Elmar bore down on Kieran, who scuttled away like a dung beetle. Kieran got on his feet and tried to run, only to have his way blocked by Braun and Saria. She glared at him and made it plain that she did not need much of a reason to strike him again. Before she could make good on her silent threat, Elmar grabbed him by the neck and this time threw him on his back. "You are abjured," Elmar declared as he towered over the wheezing Kieran like a thunderhead. "You are a hunter, no more. You are welcome in Tegerton, no more. You have forfeited all you have been." Once the words were spoken, a deadly calm settled among the hunters. As one who had been abjured, any one of us could kill Kieran for the slightest misdeed without fear of repercussion. "You cannot abjure me," Kieran croaked through his crushed throat. "Only the Queen can abjure me, and she would not do so over a common harlot," he protested. But he was wrong. The first hunter's word was law, and he was bound to obey. Elmar crouched in front of Kieran and grabbed him by the hair, pulling his head around to a painful angle. "Would you like to explain to the Queen why you were attempting to attack her huntress in her stable? Do you think Ashera the Ruthless will show you mercy?" Elmar released his hold and shoved Kieran's head into the dirt. Braun and Luth stepped forward, each taking one of Kieran's arms. "Strip him of his weapons, his belt, and his boots," Elmar ordered, and the brothers immediately began to search him. "Throw him outside the gates and inform the guards he is not to re-enter under any circumstances." "You cannot," Kieran said hoarsely. "Where am I to go?" Elmar grabbed his face roughly. "I don't care where you go. I hope you die quickly to save me the trouble of killing you. For rest assured, if I set eyes on you again, it will mean your death." The first hunter then struck my attacker across the face, splitting his lip and spattered his blood across the ground. Braun and Luth dragged their limp prisoner away as I was immediately in Elmar's arms. He cradled my head against his chest as I held him, hiding my face in the folds of his shirt. His hands moved to smooth my hair, only to have his fingers catch on a piece of straw, further evidence of what I narrowly avoided. "If anything had happened to you, it would destroy me," he said softly. "I don't know what I would do without you. I love you so dearly." "He said he would take me from you," I whispered, my voice so muffled in his chest I did not know if he could hear me. I was so afraid that he would. I fought against him, if only to keep that from happening. "I cannot be apart from you, not ever again. I love you so much." "No one can take you from me," he said. "No one." He kissed the top of my head, and I cautiously looked around only to see that my fellow hunters remained in a protective circle around us, as if waiting for their leader to proclaim all was well before they could disperse. I found it oddly comforting how they would wait patiently as they observed Aylmar and I pledge our love to each other, neither intruding nor interrupting. Braun and Luth returned, and Aylmar did not release me as they spoke to him. "He has been stripped, thrown out, and the gates barred," Luth reported. Braun hung his head and looked positively despondent. "You did not know this would happen," I said to Braun, as I gently touched his arm. "Do not blame yourself." He did not raise his head or answer me, but spoke to the first hunter instead. "I will accept whatever punishment you see necessary," Braun said, not daring to look at Aylmar's face. "It will be to report to me immediately if you have the slightest indication that one of us will be harmed," Aylmar said sternly, "even if you believe it was said in jest, and especially if you think it will anger me." Braun nodded in compliance, his guilt hardly abated. Aylmar said a few low words to Finley, then gently lifted me and carried me toward the palace. There were not any tunnel entrances between the stable and my chambers, and it must have been a strange sight to witness the first hunter carrying my disheveled form past the shops and tradesmen. I kept my face firmly against his shoulder and did not utter a word until my door swung shut behind us, when I asked if it was still charmed. "Yes," Aylmar answered. "He can't reach you here." He sat me in my favorite chair and knelt before me, then pushed the horse blanket aside to examine my clothes. Aylmar carefully placed his hand on my thigh as he said, "I need you to tell me whose blood this is." I looked down and saw that the crotch of my pants was all but ripped away, and huge streaks of blood soaked the cloth. I'm not sure," I stammered. I cut him, but his fingers..." I covered my face with my hands, unable to say aloud how his hard, cruel fingers had jabbed at me, grinding into my flesh. "I need to get him off me," I said as I leapt to my feet. I tore the ruined clothes from my body and submerged myself in my bath as I willed the memory of Kieran off my skin. I grabbed a sponge and began to scrub vigorously when Aylmar, who had crouched next to the edge, caught my hand. "You are going to rub yourself raw," he said as he took the sponge from me. "I have to get him off me," I repeated. "I am covered in him. I hate it." I did not know how to explain to him that I felt dirty, not only on the surface, but as if his horrible presence had tarnished my soul. "Relax," Aylmar said. "I will help you." I let him lift me from the bath and set me on one of the thick rugs. He dipped a sponge in warm water and removed all traces of blood and dirt, stroking my skin so gently I barely felt him. My hair tumbled free as he unbound it and combed it smooth and let my curls obscure the bruises that were beginning to form. "Do you want me to send for a healer?" Aylmar asked as he traced the long scratches on my back. "No," I replied. "I just want you to stay here with me." Aylmar gathered me in his arms and carried me to bed for the second time that day and covered me with blankets, even though the afternoon was warm. I caught his hands as my wide eyes begged him to stay as close as possible, and he lay on top of the coverlet as he pulled my back to his chest. His fingers gently combed through my damp hair, and he softly murmured that he was there now, and nothing could hurt me. "The way he touched me," I said, almost to myself. "He touched me in places you never have, in ways you never would." I moved onto my back and turned to face him. I thought he was my friend. How could I have been so wrong? We were all wrong. Something caught Aylmar's eye, and he pushed my hair behind my shoulder. I followed his gaze to see a bruise puffing up near my collarbone, scored by ugly red welts. He traced the welts with his fingertips before he softly kissed the wounds. "You take away the feel of him on me," I said as he gently kissed the marks on my arms and around my wrists. Aylmar asked me where else I hurt, and I drew back the blanket to show him the deep gouges on my thighs where my clothes had been, all but torn away. I kept my back to Aylmar while he washed me, trying to hide the evidence of Kieran's crime. I thought it would make him angry. Instead, his eyes were so full of concern, I thought he would weep. He kissed my cheek before bending his head to the gouges and touched his lips to them as delicately as if I were a flower whose petals would wilt under his breath. Elmar followed the line of my body, placing one kiss next to the last until he reached one location Karen had not managed to defile. His touch became so gentle I almost could not feel his lips upon me. It was not a sexual act, but rather an assurance to both Elmar and myself that my virtue was intact and nothing had been taken without my permission. He lingered for long moments before continuing to my stomach, pausing to pay special attention to the scratches near my waist. I touched his hair, dragged my fingers through the long chestnut strands, and his lips traveled up my breastbone to my neck until they were on mine again. I put my hands under his shirt and pushed it up over his head. "I need to feel you," I said as I wrapped my arms around him and tried to put as much of my skin against his as possible. He pulled my favorite coverlet around us and enveloped me in his arms and wound his fingers in my hair as he covered my face in kisses. "If anything had happened to you," he began. "But nothing did," I finished. "I fought him off, and Finley and Saria heard me," I added, knowing that when he saw the blood on my clothes, he had thought the worst. "What did you want to ask me tonight?" I asked, desperate to change the subject. "Later," Elmar said as he stroked my hair. "Just rest with me for now, and let me hold you and thank the gods that you are safe." We remained in each other's arms and watched the shadows grow long across the floor until sleep claimed us. When I awoke and saw Elmar beside me, I initially thought the afternoon had been a horrible dream. I hoped it had been nothing more than a dream, but as I untangled myself from his arms and saw the bruises around my wrists, I was confronted with my grim reality. My eyes settled on Elmar's shirt as it lay crumpled on the floor, and I put it on, partly because I was too tired to search for clothing, partly because wearing something of his made me feel safe. I placed some dried tea in the kettle and set it before the fire to boil, trying to be quiet so I would not disturb his sleep. As always, Elmar somehow knew I was awake and opened his eyes and came to join me before the crackling blaze. He eyed his shirt on me, but declined when I asked if he wanted me to return it. "It looks better on you," he said, and against my will I smiled. I handed him a bowl of tea as he sat on the rug and poured my own as I knelt next to him. "You need to speak to Ashera, don't you?" I asked as I stared at the bottom of my bowl. "Yes," Elmar replied. "She needs to know what happened. She will want to speak with you as well." I sighed, knowing the truth of his words. While I dearly loved the Queen and I would speak of anything with her, I dreaded the thought of reliving the afternoon's events with her, or anyone. I drank my tea slowly and tried to erase my memory, or at least some of the horrible details. "There is something else I need to discuss with you," Elmar said carefully. "Anything else?" I said, now staring at the floor. I'm going to read the other half of this chapter next week. It is a very long chapter. That is the halfway point. And that was long, and it was kind of like a lot. So I am going to go back to the beginning and put like a little trigger warning in there, and then I have to put that in the title as well, because that was a lot. That's not like a little spice. That's like trauma. Alright, so we're going to take this off. It feels very nice. See, it's a very thick cloth. My face kind of just soaked it all up. So, like I said, this is a collab with the Beauty Ninjas. I have linked the playlist for the rest of the Beauty Ninjas below. Go check them out, see what they got going on for their Mask Mondays. Also down there will be a link to the previous chapters if you need to catch up. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe. All that fun stuff is below. I hope every single one of you has an absolutely amazing day, and I will see you all next time.
Troubles on the mind, hands around your throat, out in open waters trying to stay afloat. Remember to forget.